Hiya, my name is Baileys. I figured I'd pick something interesting but easy for me to talk about for my first video. You've probably noticed already because of the avatar I use that yes, I'm a skeptic channel. I'm here to debunk the liberals and SJWs. Just kidding. I'm something far more acceptable. A furry. But how could I have become a furry in the good Catholic country that is Ireland? Well, I've always really been into animals, probably since I could talk. Almost all of my toys and all of the books I read as a child had to be animal related. My favourite books were usually animal and dinosaur encyclopedias that I learned off by heart. It was actually a party trick of my parents to pick a random page, tell me what animal it was, and I'd have to give them a fact, and I'd always say it off by heart. Suffice to say, I really liked animals. This passion for animal knowledge actually led to me doing my university degree on them, and now I'm an ecologist. This connection to animals obviously meant that the media I preferred, like movies, games, and shows, usually featured animal characters. The Land Before Time, The Lion King, Tarzan, Pokemon, Digimon, all that good stuff. I used to reenact these movies and shows with my toys, and this of course led to me making up my own stories, making up my own characters, just playing games with them. I'd say one of the biggest influences on me was Pokemon. In the games, I'd always give my Pokemon names, backstories, personalities, sometimes little voices. Yes, I know. This was brought to a whole new level when Pokemon Mystery Dungeon came out. Dear God, did those games impact me. Especially Explorers of Time and Sky. Oh, they're such good games. They definitely changed me. They were probably the first games that made me tear up and feel. I don't know if any other game has impacted me like that since. Maybe I just don't play enough games. So yeah, inevitable Pokemon characters and stories, some of which I still hold dear to this very day. During all of this, I didn't have an internet connection. Our house didn't have access to the internet until around 2008. I didn't know that what I was doing was a thing that other people did. I was happily doodling and writing away in my own little bubble. Then, when I was just turning 12, I received a copy of Little Big Planet and a PlayStation Online account. We had just got an upgrade to our internet connection, so it was now strong enough to play online games. Little Big Planet, or LBP for short, was my life for about 4 years. I love that game. I dived straight in there, chatting to people online and creating stuff. That was the game's whole thing, and I loved it. You were able to customize your character in the game, and I'm sure you can see where this is going. I would always be dressed up as either a straight up animal or some kind of cat girl. Yeah, big red flag right there. A popular genre thing to make on Little Big Planet were stories about animals, wolves especially, and I was all up in that community. I even made my own OCs and my own little levels and stories. Please don't try and find them. They're awful and they won't be worth the trouble of trying to find them. Yeah, there was lots of people in that community that I'm sure grew up to be furries in real life. I even remember one of them in particular did grow up to be like hardcore furry when I looked them up later on in life. So I'm not the only one. While I was in that community, I never actually heard the term furry being used to describe anyone, including myself. I didn't hear the term furry until I was playing with a close friend of mine on Little Big Planet. We were playing together one day and he just said, "Hey, you look like a furry." Of course, I was dressed up as a wolf character of mine, but I still had no idea what the term furry meant, so I asked. He just laughed and said, "Oh, there's this creepy group of people who dress up as animals and think they're sexy." And I, of course, was like, "Oh dear." So he said, "Yeah, you should probably just change into your much more acceptable cat girl outfit instead when you play with me." And so I did. This guy was actually my best friend at the time, and he's going to come up a lot during this story, so I'm just going to call him H. H was always critical of my furry leanings and love for animals and anthro characters, so I kept most of it hidden from him. Despite being critical of my furry leanings, H, ironically, was actually a brony for a long time, so take that as you will. After a few years of being close online friends, H and I actually met up in real life, and after that we started dating. My art and interests were still very furry, but H really instilled a distrust and dislike of the fandom. I never looked up the fandom or furries because of him. I had a DeviantArt account where I posted some of my art and found other artists like me, but turned away from them when I saw furry mentioned because I knew H would disapprove. He would frequently show me furry cringe compilations and Worst of all, he'd send me very graphic furry art just to freak me out and tell me that that's all the fandom is. It's all not safe for work stuff. Every now and again, when I was really proud of an artwork I did, which was usually of like an animal, particularly wolves at the time, he would edit them so that they became not safe for work, even though he knew that it really upset me. So yeah, that was one of the tamer things wrong with our relationship. I could make a whole video on it, but I won't because it's just not a fun thing to talk about. Anyway, I was with H for a good few years, and when we broke up, I actually met a furry in real life almost immediately after. I was trying to recover from the breakup by going to more society events in university, just to pick up a few hobbies that I could never do when I was with H because he thought they were weird or nerdy or just not cool. One of the things I really wanted to try was playing in tabletop RPGs like Dungeons & Dragons. My first day at a Dungeons & Dragons tabletop startup social for DMs looking for players for their campaign led me to finding a player group that I connected with. One of the players of that group was a proud furry. We were just chatting about what kind of players we'd like to see or play as, and werewolves came up, to which she said, "Oh, I'm going to push for me to play a werewolf because as a wolf fur, I love playing them." She actually plays a werewolf in our current D&D campaign. Hearing this, of course, piqued my interest because I was starting to doubt everything H had ever told me. So I asked about her persona, her artwork. She was actually getting a suit made at the time, and so she was showing me lots of work in progress pictures, and the passion and love for her character in her eyes just connected with me. I was just loving every moment of her just fangirling over her maker and the artwork she'd received and how happy she was her character was coming to life. I just connected with that passion right away. I don't know how to explain it. It was like a kindred spirit kind of thing, I guess. After that meetup, I just went straight to researching the furry fandom to see if she was a rare example of a furry and if it was as bad a fandom as I was always told it was. And that brought me to furry YouTube. I watched con videos, suit making, artist videos, and of course popular furry YouTubers. I tried watching Majira, but his content just wasn't really my thing, but watching him led to other furries being suggested like Pokari Roo and Beta Ada Delota. This eventually led me to my favourite furry YouTuber, Artemis Wishfoot. Artemis actually sent me down another researching path because of his proud asexual content and asexual awareness, but that's like a whole other story, so we'll stay on track here. The sexual side of the fandom was always a bit of a barrier for me, but knowing that there's a huge portion of it that's non-sexual and even asexual was a godsend to me. With that newfound knowledge, I was comfortably able to identify myself as a furry. So thanks, Artemis. You gave me that final bit of encouragement to jump right into this fluffy mess. So I finally was calling myself a furry. Time to make a fursona, I guess. You know it's bad when your fursona comes to you immediately, like a repressed vision you've always had. My art became even more furry based and inspired, just fully leaning into it. I eventually joined Telegram, where I'm now a member of an Irish furry chat, and furry Twitter. I even opened for furry art commissions. The transition is complete. All I need now is a fursuit and I'm golden. So yeah, that was my furry journey. It's a bit more complicated than others, but I hope it was still interesting. Being a furry isn't a big deal to me, it's just a part of who I am. The fandom and furry identity is so broad you can practically make anything out of it. To me, it's a fun art community filled with interesting people that I love interacting with. I stay away from the not safe for work stuff and most of the drama as much as possible because that's just not what the fandom is to me. To be clear, I don't mind people who partake in those sides of the fandom. As long as you're not hurting anybody, what do I care? My channel isn't going to be 100% furry based, but I thought I'd just clear the air that yes, I'm a furry in case anybody isn't sure so we can move on from it right away. So yeah, thanks for listening this far. I hope you enjoyed it. I'll catch you in the next video maybe.